Welcome back to the Substance Painter for Beginners series. This is part 7. In the previous part, we added midtones to the egg. So you can see here, this is the midtones. These are the midtones. So what are midtones? So midtones are kind of like colors or values that are in between highlights and shadows. So in this video, we're going to be adding highlights, and then we'll add shadows in the next video. And of course, we will turn the sections of these cracks here into lava, so that'll be something fun we'll be doing. All right, so to do the highlights, what we're gonna do, we're gonna create another new fill layer, and we will turn everything off again. Go to color, select a kind of brighter blue color, something like this. Then we're gonna right click, add a black mask. And then we will we'll go back to the fill layer, click on height, and we'll set it to 0.2. All right, so this is much higher up. So when we actually paint, it should be something like that. All right, so now we need to select our brush. That's very important. So window, views, shelf to bring up your shelf. We're gonna go to brushes. So for the highlights brush, I want something that kind of comes to like a point almost. So let's see what we got. Let's find a nice brush. I could do a textured brush, but I want to do like a kind of semi-textured brush. Let's try this one. And then we can remove this over. Let's change some of the brush settings. I think this is too much flow, so let's turn the flow down quite a bit. Something like that I think is fine. It's a little bit more precise than the other one, but still has some texture to it. So when you're adding your highlights on these corners here, kind of like pops off a little bit. All right, let's see what kind of results we can get with this. We can always adjust it as we go as well. We can always adjust the color. All right, I think the color is too hard to see. Here, let's just like make it crazy for a second. All right, I think that's good. Let's try that. So it's definitely much brighter. Okay, now that's giving us these like sharp corners, so we can paint this in. So you can use the brackets to increase and decrease the brush size. All right, that's a little extreme. Okay, let's see. Let's do this. Let's clear the mask. Clear the mask. And then reduce this to like 5. So it's very faint, so that we can gradually paint it in. So I want to get something that looks good, but isn't too strong. And I don't want the highlights to be everywhere, just like with the face. I just want like a little bit of highlights here and there. So kind of something like that. And we can always adjust it as we go. Let's hit up some of these corners. Make it huge for just like some top sections. All right, I think that actually looks pretty decent. We just have to blend it better. It's a pretty good result, I think. So we're gonna have like lava in there, like in here. I wasn't painting this, I was just showing. There's gonna be like lava stuff in there. And we'll do some modifications to the inside part of the creature as well for when we put the lava in, so it kind of transitions between the two. So like the lava just isn't appearing. There's like lava around parts in here and like cracks. That'll be like a more of a fine-tuning situation. Now I don't think I want too many highlights, as I said earlier. I just want like a few on certain parts. Make the brush huge just to like do a quick little... Actually, let's do that. Let's get the outer parts of the shell, like the top, with like a huge version of the brush on low flow so you can't really see it too much. Just to give it some more visual variety there, give it some highlights in some of the parts that are flat and broad. And then we'll do like the corners and the edges. All right, now we'll resume the corners. Now these are like cracks in the shell, so they would have some color around them, very likely. So it's like where a thing broke. If that makes sense. So it's like points of tension. Just getting this corner. I'll get this one a little bit better too. And this one as well. It's nice for emphasis, I think. And I'm using a blue, so it has like some contrast with the red. So it's not all just the same. So you kind of, so here's with the highlights, here's without. So it does add quite a bit. And every little layer you add and paint on is, assuming you're doing it in a methodical way and for a good reason, adds to the model, like the appearance of it. So just like before, you can hold an Alt and rotate by pressing down on the tablet. And you can also hold in middle click while holding an Alt on your mouse, middle click to pan, scroll wheel zooms, and then right click plus Alt and dragging zooms. So that's how I'm navigating. And then rotating your light is shift plus right click and drag. That's like the most important thing, I think, when texturing something, is constantly checking the lighting in different angles. And when you're hand painting, it's absolutely mandatory that you do that, and that you know how to do that. And you should always check your model too, because like sometimes, even if you're using like a material, you'll put a material on a model, and if you don't inspect it, you might miss the fact that parts of the material look bugged out, like they don't look correct. Like maybe you're using like a rock material and there's like an obvious seam or something. That can happen pretty easily. So you always want to check out your model from different angles and in different lighting situations. All right, we're almost done with the top, which is good for the highlights on this part. Now I want to do more in like the shadows on this, because I don't want too much in terms of light going on with the top. I just wanted to have some color and some variation and some like micro surface in the height map. So micro surface is just like tiny little details that kind of show up when light hits it. That's not like the actual definition. Like micro surface is just like the tiniest part of the surface that you can visibly see, type of thing. So like if you have, like here's the difference. So let's say I click on this brush and I just paint this. That's a very obvious detail, right? Like that's not very, that's like very macro, like it's huge, you can see it. Whereas when I'm using this brush at 5%, I do something like that, it's like barely, like you can see it, but it's hard to tell. So like you can see here these tiny little bumps, that's like micro surface. It's present and it adds to the model and you can perceive it, but it's hard to like pinpoint. Like there's just like hundreds of little bumps. Like you can't just be like, oh, this is the bump. And we're not manually painting in all those, that would be crazy. We're using a textured brush. Much easier, much faster. That's the idea, at least. Alright, we're almost done with the top. Just have to finish up parts of it. Most textured brushes with low opacity, like low flow, like opacity is kind of similar, can be used to create like this like micro surface effect. And the texture itself is what shows through, so you want to make sure you deliberately select a brush that achieves the texture you're looking for on the model, otherwise it'll look weird. So like if you want like a thing to look scaly, like a lizard or something, and you use a textured brush that makes it look like dirt, that would be very strange visually. So you would rather do something that looks more like scales for the micro surface details. In this case, we're like painting like a stylized model, so I don't need it to look exactly like photorealistic rock. But if that's what we were going for, then we would want to figure out a way to do that. Alright, so here's the top with the new details. We can check those out here. Now we just have to do the bottom. Now for the bottom, I don't really want to paint down here. You can do that a little bit, like you can see I already did, but I would mostly paint on like the sides because the bottom should be darker anyways. Because it's, you know, assuming this thing is like alive or sitting somewhere, it would be, you know, the bottom would be darker, it'd be dirty from touching the ground. That can help you texture things too, like figuring out like what does this thing actually do. You know, if you were to paint some boots or something that were in mud, you would have to paint the mud, right? Like it's like, okay, they were just in mud recently, there'd be mud on the bottoms, maybe some mud splashed up. It's good to like think about how the environment affects your model and like what they would change about it. That can help you if you're like stuck on something. Alright, we are almost done with this bad boy. In terms of the overall process of painting this, I would say we're over halfway done. There's definitely still a few more videos to add more details and to do more to this. But we definitely are getting pretty close, so if you're wondering. I don't have like a number of videos planned in mind. I'm just covering a project from start to finish, and whatever number of videos we end up on is what we end up on. I want to take something from nothing, like from an unpainted model, and get a decent result. And that's the tutorial series, so we're going to keep on doing that until we get to the results that we want. And then of course we're going over basics. So even if, you know, you don't particularly care for this model, all these steps can be used on other models. And that's really the important thing, is to trick you into learning the basics by giving you a project. And then by the end of the project, you'll have learned things that you can take and use on your own models and your own sculpts and stuff like that. And I do provide the model now. It's in the description. So if you don't have this model, you can download it for free. I made a Google Drive. Anyone can download it. So you have permission. You have my explicit permission to download this model and use it for learning. Because I know like some tutorials, they don't make their own model, but here at 3D Bros, everything is custom brewed, homegrown, locally owned. So, there you go. All right, let's get these corners going. We still have to add shadows to this thing. And then we're gonna add like the lava, which will be fun. I'll show like a missive, how to add emissive stuff. There's like a specific process for that. But it's good to know, because you can add it into anything. I'll cover glass in a different video as well. Glass is really useful to know how to add. It's basically just an opacity layer with some settings. And we'll go over painting glass as well. I'm going to do a lot of standalone videos. I just want to have some introductory like series so that if anyone doesn't know like the basics, I can just link them to those and I can know what they've learned from those videos because I made them. Because like I can't just link you to some tutorial series if I don't know what's in it. Or if it covers all the things. It's like, oh, just use a mask and do this. And they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that type of thing. So we'll create a catalog of videos and also definitely suggest things if you want. If you need something covered, like how do you do this thing in this software? I use Substance Painter, Substance Designer, and ZBrush, and Photoshop. The other guy I work with, the other 3D bro, he does things in Blender. He does like animation, rigging, rendering, stuff like that. I also do stuff in Unreal Engine. I'm going to be doing tutorials for that pretty soon. It's actually going to be part of this series. How to import something to Unreal Engine. So I'll show how to export it from Substance Painter, how to bring it in, how to make it more performance friendly. Performance is a huge thing for game development, so knowing how to increase the performance of an asset helps. Alright, we're almost done with this. Alright, let's check out the results. Let's look at the bottom. Looks pretty good, I think. And then this side here. I do want to hit the corners of this a little bit better. Just a little bit more. Maybe just parts of it. Alright, so we have that. Let's check out the other side. Okay, I think that's good for now. In the next video, we will be adding the... Oh yeah, let's name this highlight layer. It's called highlights. Definitely save it. In the next video, we'll be adding shadows. And then that'll be it for painting the egg. Then we're going to add the lava sections to the egg. So we'll add an emissive layer. And there's definitely going to be more steps as well. I'm just trying to get like the basic highlights, midtones, shadows on both the shell and the inside of the model. And then once we get all of that done, which should be by the end of the next video, we're going to start adding cool different effects, looking at exporting, and then eventually importing into Unreal Engine, and then Unity. And I'll show how to export for both, as well as import for both. So definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful or enjoyed this. Drop a comment, let me know what you think, and also feel free to suggest things you want tutorials for. So for example, like how to animate something, how to UV in Blender. I might even get into Blender sculpting just so that I know it. I know how to sculpt fairly well in ZBrush. I am getting into 3D modeling myself. The one guy I work with, he 3D models pretty well. But yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next video.